Okay, we'll make a start. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Make UK webinar. My name is Chris Beck. I'm the editor of Manufacturing Management magazine, a leading publication for the UK manufacturing sector. It's great to see so many of you here today. I can see the number going up as we speak as well. So come in, make yourself comfortable, and I hope you enjoy the session this morning. Before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this session. We're going to be using it on various social media and website and things. But everyone who's listening, you are only in listening mode as participants. You can't unmute yourself. You can't turn your video on, anything like that. If you would like to ask a question, you should see a Q&A box. I'm sure most people by now know how to use Zoom webinars, but if you haven't used it for a while or you've not been on a webinar like this before, there's just a box on your screen. If you want to ask a question, we'll have time to answer those later on. But over the next hour and a half or so, we're going to be discussing how technology, and in particular digitalisation, could help the UK grow its productivity. You've probably heard productivity being spoken about by government and employers, especially within industries like manufacturing. And the reason for this is that the UK is lagging behind many other industrialized nations, including America, Germany, and France when it comes to productivity. And this is a problem really that's plagued us since the financial crisis of 2008. And last month, a report by Make UK and Infor aimed to investigate whether the adoption of digital technologies could help lift productivity across the UK. And we're going to be discussing some of the key findings of that report in the session today, as well as discussing the wider benefits of adopting technology and learning from some manufacturers themselves about how technology has helped them. And to help me do that, I'd like to welcome the panel we've got today. First up, we have Nat Macaulay. Nat is the Managing Director of JCM Contracts, a Midlands-based bespoke joinery manufacturer. And after roles in consulting and in the Royal Navy, Nat has taken a forward-looking approach to UK manufacturing, especially amongst SMEs, taking particular inspiration from the German Mittelstand model. She's also chair of Make UK's West Midlands Regional Advisory Board and is the first woman to hold that role. Up next, we've got Sarah Blacksmith. Now, Sarah's worked for Siemens for over 20 years and has risen through the ranks, and earlier this year was appointed General Manager of Siemens Digital Industries Factory in Congleton. Before that, she'd had roles including Leader of Factory Operations at Congleton and Head of Operations. She's very passionate about skills and diversity as a way of unlocking the potential of UK manufacturing. Next is Nina Gryf, Senior Policy Manager at Make UK and author of the Digital Adoption Report. Working across all areas of policy, Nina works closely on Make UK's Delivering Sustained Growth campaign, which focuses on technology and innovation across manufacturing. She's also spent 3 years focusing on Make UK's post-Brexit referendum policies, with a particular focus on trade. And I'm sure, Nina, that kept you very busy indeed. And last but not least is Andrew Kinder, Senior Vice President for Industry Strategy at Infor. Andrew leads the manufacturing strategy globally for Infor, with responsibility for defining industry go-to-market plans and aligning the best technologies for Infor's global customer base. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. And before we make a start on a kind of wider discussion, I'll invite each of you to quickly run through how you see the opportunities for UK manufacturing by investing in digital tools and technologies. And Nina, I'll come to you first, if that's okay. I've spoken quite a lot about this new report that you released a few weeks ago. Did you want to run us through some of the key findings from it?
I would love that. Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen and I'm going to say a lot. I use the word productivity for, hopefully you can bear with me. So as Chris mentioned, we published Digital Adoption, the Missing Link to Productivity Growth report together with Info a couple of weeks ago. And we surveyed over 200 manufacturers while we were asking them what digital technologies they're investing in, what barriers they still finding in terms of getting onto the digital adoption road, and what lessons they've learned, the manufacturers already have invested in digital technologies. So when we look at we ask them about what stages of digital adoption they are. And when we look at the stages, the 4 different stages, the preconception stage, which is a stage where they do nothing, it's 18% of manufacturers. They not thinking about it, they don't plan, they don't include any of the activities in the business plan. The conception phase is the phase we call thinking phase, where they just like considering, looking what's available on the market, what sort of solutions digital technologies could bring to the business. And then the evolution stage, where we can see most of the manufacturers we spoke to, it's almost 50% of manufacturers are in the evolution stage. And this is the stage, the most kind of busiest stage. They invest into digital technologies, they implemented some sensors, they have a lot of analysis, a lot of data they need to analyze, they need to collate, and they kind of want to get the next steps into the revolution stage, the profit-making stage, where they derive the value from the digital technologies, when they change the way they talk to the customers, work with the customers. And what we found quite interesting in this report compared to the previous innovation monitors and previous surveys is that the majority of manufacturers are in this evolution stage, almost 50%, as I mentioned. And what we think it's because there was an acceleration of digital adoption for the past 2 years, probably because of the pandemic, Brexit, supply chain challenges. But perhaps the barriers that are still existing, like lack of skills and expertise knowledge, is still unable to get to that revolution stage. And when we ask them what areas within their factories they introduce the digital technologies, it's the top 3 is the marketing and sales, product designs, in invoicing and finance. And it's possibly because these technologies are the most kind of mature on the market, the most popular, and slightly on the lower cost compared to other digital technologies and digital tools that are existing there. Looking at the money, how much they are spending in the business cycle, investment cycle, of the budget. So it's between 50K to 500K in the business cycle they want to invest. And when we zoom into the SMEs, it's almost equally divided, the money that they spend, probably depending on their maturity, their digital maturity. But it's just over 20% they spend between 50,000 and then almost 30% between 50 to 100K. And then over 30% of manufacturers spend between 100,000 to 500,000. And on average, they expect return on investment between 3 to 5 years. And why we talking about money, the positive news, there's some kind of optimistic feeling about it, that they plan to spend, they have spent more in the last 2 years, and they're planning to spend even more in the next 2 years, which means they want to stay competitive within the market, and they want to probably create more resilient businesses in terms of future looking, whatever challenges are laying ahead. And that kind of brings, so they're planning to automate as well. Automation is on the rise. They automated the businesses and the manufacturing processes in the last 24 months, and they plan to automate even more, probably perhaps trying to address labor shortages and different challenges that laying ahead for manufacturers and businesses in general in the future. While we're talking about automation, we kind of have to mention the skills and jobs, as it always comes to kind of, will robots steal our jobs? 37% of manufacturers mentioned and optimistic that automation brings and creates more opportunities, job opportunities. 25% said it decreases the job opportunities within their businesses. but it probably will create more need for high skills, high level skills, and then mid-level skills, for sure. This is something that we have to look out for. And then looking into benefits, when we asked manufacturers, what do they hope for when they spend, 500, 100,000 of pounds? What do they hope for to the digital technologies to bring to the business? What sort of benefits? So over 60% of manufacturers said that they hope for productivity increase and production flexibility. And as we can see here in the slide, the manufacturers who already are in the process of digitalization already have this technologies. They can see the increase of productivity. Almost 40% of manufacturers can see increase of productivity on the productivity within the business. And when we zoom into by how much, what percentage of productivity increase within the business is there, as you can see, 32% of manufacturers see by 10%, increased by 10% of productivity within their business. And then when we ask about specific technologies, the kind of top 3 critical technologies manufacturers are thinking of, it's probably the kind of technologies that create a platform for other technologies to work better and be more optimized by making sure they have cybersecurity technologies like cloud computing to be able to hold all the data and facilitate all the different technologies. But the main kind of a lot of difference and difference are obviously the IoT, additive manufacturing, and robots and AI are the top of the most benefiting technologies within the manufacturing sector. Manufacturers are staying very confident that the productivity will increase in the next 2 years. Only 1 in 10 of our surveyed manufacturers think they might decrease. And then going back into the barriers. So the manufacturers are still seeing the barriers that they still stay the same that we asked in the previous surveys of Innovation Monitor and through the digitalization. What stops them to get on that journey? What stops them to invest in digital technologies is the lack of skills. So skills, and then access to finance, plus the culture without the business came up quite high as well, that there needs to be backing from the decision makers within the company. And then the manufacturers who took that risk, spent the amount of money, and already have and doing a lot of digitalization within the manufacturing process, within the factories. What are they facing? What challenges they're facing in terms of optimizing on the digital investment is, again, the kind of repeating the same challenges. Is the lack of skills, internal skills within the company, is the high cost of the technology, and it's the lack of vision. Where is it that they want to get? And it's not just a one decision like, let's invest, let's just have this beautiful machinery, beautiful technology, cutting edge 3D printer, but what is it that we want from it? How do we want to take this forward? And what can we do as a manufacturing family? What do we suggest to our members? It's to commit to upskilling, I guess, across the business. But decision makers, our leadership, need to be more aware of what's on the market, what's benefiting to the business, and also peer-to-peer networks, events like this, talking about it, listening for what other manufacturers are doing. And then there are a lot of different schemes and providers across the regions. We probably will follow up with the email, some links for you to help out. There is, if you want to just start small, on a small budget, there is a program, Digital Manufacturing on a Shoestring. There's Made Smarter that we campaign as Make UK to be extended across all of the regions. There's an R&D tax credit as well that can be used can help out manufacturing catapult centers and universities as well. All the local universities are always keen to help and looking for SMEs that they can help within innovation and digitalization. So thank you. That's all for me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nina. That was a really interesting overview. And Andrew, I'll come to you next. Obviously, the survey was Infor's doing as well, and a lot of what Nina said there, I'm sure, resonates with what you've seen at Infor, not just in the UK but abroad. But what were your takeaways, I suppose, from the research you've done with Make UK?
Well, so firstly, I would say thank you for Make UK for delivering what I think is a really well-researched paper. It's got really concise findings in there. I mean, we did work collaboratively with Make UK on the questions. Why us? Why did we feel that we needed to do that? It's something we've been doing for a while. I mean, manufacturing is what we focus on most. So it's kind of important that we really understand that market. And we do know, everybody knows, there's a strong thread between productivity and improvement in manufacturing productivity and digitization. We just wanted more granularity in terms of, what the state of play is, and that report certainly gave that. So thank you, Make UK. What was the finding that excited me most? Well, all of them, because I'm a data monkey as well, so I liked all the findings. But one, clearly, as a technology provider, we were pleased to see was that, and I'll read it out there, for those who have invested in digital technologies, the returns are positive. And I think 2/3 reported that investments have paid off and they felt better prepared to weather the storm. Now, as you can imagine, as a cloud tech provider who are facing for what is a difficult climate for many of our manufacturers in terms of how to invest, when to invest, how much to invest in digital technologies. It was good to see some evidence that other companies have done that journey, are finding that it's left them in a better place. And particularly where those correlations between the technologies and an outcome and value is very strong. And that came out in the survey, typically around, more,marketing and supply chains and PLM and MES. Those sort of very tight connections to value is where customers feel, I think, more comfortable to be able to invest. There was also a good recognition, I think it was 73%, that failure to invest would risk falling behind competitors in the race for growth. And that is something that is a concern for us as we support UK manufacturers. It's not a race where, as an individual, as a company, you want to be a last mover, because otherwise you might be first in a different kind of race, and that's not what we want. So, the good news is for those that have taken the plunge, the journey seems to be worth it. And now the sobering finding. Whilst the companies surveyed are benefiting from their digital investments, I think I found somewhere that it said 43% of companies are still in that preconception or conception stage, which is how Nina started the presentation. So I would definitely echo the recommendation that came out of the report that says manufacturers need to make that first step out of preconception into conception, and they need to start moving from thinking to doing. And I know that we will discuss that over the course of the next hour. So those are my takeaways, Chris. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Andrew. It's a really interesting overview. We'll bring the two manufacturers in at this point. Just before we do that, I know a couple of people have asked whether the slides will be available afterwards. They will be. We will be sending that. Make UK will be sending those out to anybody who's registered. But for now, Sarah, we'll bring you in at this point. Could you give us a kind of overview, I suppose, of some of the digitalization work that you've done at Congleton, and some of the benefits that you've seen from that, and do they kind of tally with some of the findings, I suppose, that Make UK just spoke about?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got quite a stringent target year on year for our productivity. So we've got to achieve 7% out of our overheads costs each year. And part of that, how we have achieved that, traditionally has been lean manufacturing. And then probably, I think 7 or 8 years ago, when we started to look at what were we not looking at, which was all around advanced manufacturing techniques, and the digital tools that that we've mentioned here, and that was a real opportunity for us then to make that step change in productivity. So yeah, I think for us, obviously it's making sure that we can hit our productivity targets. It's making sure that ultimately the main aim is to remain competitive. We want to keep UK manufacturing here in East Cheshire, so that's a real driver for us. and we want to be sustainable over the long term, and also more, from a decarbonisation point of view, there's benefits to be, around making ourselves more productive, using less energy, doing more with less equipment. So there's lots of opportunities for utilising both traditional tools and such as lean manufacturing, and then the advanced side of things. So probably from advanced manufacturing, robotics has definitely been a journey for us. We started our first implementation with an external, provider that helped us with those skills. We've talked a lot has come out about skills. We didn't have the skills when we embarked on this journey. And engaged a third party to help us. And it was at that point we realized, actually, we need to onboard those skills to a certain extent. So we recruited 2 engineers from Loughborough University at the time, and also then said, well, actually, we need to be bringing engineers in from different departments, and actually upskill a team that we called Productivity Through Automation team, i.e., for us, again, the main focus is always productivity, looking for opportunities to make ourselves as competitive as possible. So, we recognised that we did have a skills gap around that, but also that we wanted to upskill the people in the business. So all of the rest of the projects that we've done since that first one, they've all been done in-house with our own resource, albeit a couple of people brought in from a skills point of view to help upskill. But I think the basis of all this has to be the lean manufacturing. Don't digitalize waste, don't put processes, automate, processes that aren't very good to start with. So for me, that's the base of everything. Get your processes sorted, and then look to introduce opportunities for around digitalization or advanced manufacturing. I think from a digital tools point of view, obviously Siemens has got, we use Siemens PLM software suite, but for us, it's definitely in manufacturing. If I was to pick out one, it would be around discrete event simulation, using that as an opportunity to identify waste in our processes around utilization and efficiencies of different cells, for example, but also then to implement different ideas quicker, to test them. So I think those have been really beneficial, that those sort of software tools have been really beneficial for us to identify and implement as quickly as possible. So those are just a couple of examples. I could give more, but don't want to talk too long.
Well, thanks, Sarah. There's a couple of things there that I'm sure we'll touch on over the course of the next hour or so. But finally, Nat, you've been hanging on for so long. So long there. Thank you so much. Can we get a kind of overview of how you see digital technologies from a SME perspective? We've obviously heard from Siemens there, but from a smaller company, how are you seeing digital technology?
Of course. Good morning, everyone. And I suspect my reason for being on the panel this morning is because I'm a bit of a cheerleader for digital adoption. I've got to be honest, when I see those stats about the different evolutionary stages, I'd like to think that me and my business are in that revolution stage. Sometimes we get hampered by certain constraints, but I have to declare that, my perspective this morning is for any manufacturer, why wouldn't you be doing this? Whatever we do in our organization at JCM is always to better and further the business. And if digital adoption can help us do that, then, I'm all in. That said, sometimes it's not the best solution or the most cost-effective solution. So we are very, very pragmatic in the very small SME world. Every penny and every pound has to earn its keep. So I thought that there's probably not a lot I could say that your audience haven't already thought about this morning. But what I could share is in terms of how we've been able to thread the secret sauce of what we do together. And I've got a couple of just very quick shares with you that have really garnered success for us. So four key things. The first one is it's a well-worn phrase about working smarter, not harder. But I kid you not, in our SME world, we always consider that someone is smarter than us, and that when we're facing a challenge, somebody's probably already figured this out. So the very first thing we do is a Google search, because somebody's probably figured this out. And in this world that we live in today, people love to share good news and good ideas. And that's worked tremendously well for us, being able to sort of piggyback on other people's success. So definitely working smarter. And yes, there's a lot of way smarter people out there than me. The second one is an operating principle, if you like, of I need to be completely dispensable to my business. So it's what I call the what if I fall under the bus principle. And that means, that all of our systems and data and information need to be accessible from another location by B, somebody else. And that gives us that resilience, much of which we saw during COVID, of people trying to back up, in-house systems. But we've just completely leapfrogged that. So we go to, on the whole, we just default to cloud-based systems because it works incredibly well for small business. The third of my 4 buckets is there is one and only one metric in our business, and that is our profit and loss. So if something is not giving us either an equivalent bump in profit or reduction in cost, why are we doing it? And we adopt that across our entire business. It also helps us stay very focused about where we spend our money. So that is our only metric. And I'm pleased to support what Nina's provided there, that as a really private investor, if my business isn't seeing that return on investment in 3 years or less, then again, we're not doing it. And I'll give you a tangible example of where something fell out of that recently. And then my 4th bucket is cloud is best. So we sort of walk this tightrope in the SME world between finding really great software that we can see the benefit would incredibly enhance what we do, but often it's built by very large organizations that have this license economic model, and as a really small business we either can't afford it or we can't adopt multiple licenses. The one thing I would encourage your audience to do, which has paid dividends for me, you have to be a little bit cheeky, negotiate. We came across a fantastic piece of software last year. We were completely enamored with it. We could see the benefit to our business, and we picked up the phone and negotiated with them, sold them our sob story of being an SME and not having very deep pockets. And we, with a little bit of bartering and a little bit of quid pro quo, we do some work back for them. They give us a very reasonable break on the license, and we've now adopted that technology. So, be cheeky, ask. They can only say no, right? So those are the 4 things. And just to give you that example of where something didn't work for us, we've been desperate to start measuring our energy usage. And I just used this example recently. We did the return on investment to use the software, and it was a 12-year payback. So sadly, even in these days of very high energy costs, we can't support an investment profile that's 12 years. We need stuff that's going to make a difference now.
Well, thank you, Nat. That was really interesting. Really interesting things you said there. And there's a couple of things that both Nat and Sarah have said, Andrew, that I'd like to kind of put to you first. Sure. We can open it up wider as well. I can also see we've got quite a few questions in already, so please keep them coming. We can work through those in a minute. But something that Sarah said was that it's important to get the processes right before you start looking at technology, and obviously a lot of manufacturers, most manufacturers I'd hope would know a lot about lean processes and reducing waste and getting everything as streamlined, I suppose, as possible. And not I guess there's an argument to, well, I guess you'd agree with what Sarah said there. You don't just throw technology at everything and see what sticks. What would you say from an Infor perspective on that?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you don't systemize a bad process, so you do take your time. If you're lucky enough to have already, there is actually software systems out there that do process mining and process optimization. So may use those or may have those, but that assumes you already have those in the first place, and it will look to see where there are savings to be made in what might be quite a convoluting process and streamline that for productivity and for efficiency. But yes, I mean, it's always as well to map out what your to-be processes are, and then you build the system around that, not the other way around. What do we advise on? What we see in digital technologies is, because there's a lot of people who've been in piloting for a long time and have been in that preconception or conception stage, we're clearly helping a lot of companies through that digital journey. And so we see some things that that we try and guard against and we try and advise against. So one of them, we have a phrase that we use. It's a well-worn phrase, but we call it start with an end in mind. Now that's easier said than done, because people don't necessarily know what their end is. But what are we trying to get at when we say that? We do see a lot of digital projects that actually don't go anywhere. So you might make an individual decision to digitize a process or do something, and in its own right, it looks like a great thing to do, and it may even have a small payback or small benefit. But because there's so much opportunity in digital, then wouldn't it be better to sort of draw out some breadcrumbs and the steps along the way that enable you to do something that's quite transformational in your business? Now, might be, as a small business, you want to do more online. Well, you're not going to do that in one leap. If you set yourself a target that might start with the end in mind, I want to see 25% of my business online within 2 years. Well, that's not a one leap thing. I mean, that is, there are several digital steps along the way that will enable you to get there. You'll have to look at your e-commerce website. You'll have to look at your product catalog. You'll have to look at your supply chain. You'll have to have a look at what would you do with returns. You have to have a look at whether you have a different charging mechanism with some of those customers. They're all little individual digital steps and process improvements along the way, but at least they're all moving towards something that has a significant goal and business benefit for your business. So we would always say, try and spend the time, as much time as you need to figure out what direction, what vision, what goal you're going for, and then build the digital initiatives around that. And I think one of Dina's stats somewhere in terms of inhibitors, I think number 3 or number 4 I noticed was lack of vision. And it's not that there's a lack of vision, it's an unclear vision. And if you can spend that time in a workshop, usually with some assistance. So, just as Nat said, get other people in that might help you. Could be peers, could be people through Innovate UK or Make UK, that will help you think about what that vision might be for yourself. And then building the digital journey comes naturally once you know the direction that you're trying to go into. And that way you stop a lot of those digital projects that just don't go anywhere. They just phase out, or they don't yield the full ROI that you expected of them.
Absolutely, formulate a plan. I don't know if anybody else, Nina or Nat or Sarah, you might want to say something to that.
I know I would definitely agree. Like, setting a vision is totally is key, and understanding why is it you're doing what you're doing, what's your burning platform, and just to pull on top of that, I think one of them was a barrier was around culture. And so linked to that's fully linked to what Andrew was saying in terms of setting that vision, but bringing people along that journey with you as well. So the whole change management side of things, you can't communicate enough and in different ways, and explaining why you're doing things and get people really engaged with why you need to go on that journey.
Yeah, culture is really important. And Nat, is there anything you can add about culture? I know that's something that you're particularly interested in.
There is one thing I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't say, and I think somebody's referenced this on the chat already. As an SME, every single day there's just a myriad of things that need your attention. I've walked in this morning, we've got a leak, we've got an issue with one of the machines. What do I do first? So when you're thinking about digital adoption, and even if you're sold on the benefits, it can be incredibly daunting. Where do I go to even start this journey? And there's a great consultancy saying, how do you eat an elephant? And you do it one bite at a time. And the place I absolutely default to for all of my curious questions is the Growth Hub. The Growth Hub have been an absolutely incredible signposting organisation for my business, and they take particular time, care and attention to understand my business, become an ambassador for what I'm trying to achieve. So they're not just signposting you to get you, off their books. They're genuinely trying to connect you with the people that they think will best serve you, whether that's, public or private advisors, finance to capital, expertise, knowledge, etc. So for me personally, in setting that culture of adoption, Growth Hub have been absolutely invaluable to us.
Great. Nina, is there anything you want to add to that?
I just wanted to add that it's very, very difficult, I think, for small to medium enterprises, businesses, exactly to know where to start, where to go, even if they're thinking for a while. So it's very important to look within your region, what's there. If it's the Made Smarter adoption program in the Northwest, who's running for a long time now, but universities, as I mentioned before, any different providers, consultancies, it's very difficult to start on your own unless you are a large global manufacturer that probably have already in-house expertise there. But otherwise, it's just, it's very, very difficult. So seeking help is a good move, good step.
Like Nat said, Google it.
Google
Google
it.
what's out there. Yeah,
exactly.
Nina, you mentioned large global manufacturers there, and luckily we've got one on the panel. Sarah, Siemens are a large global manufacturer. Did a lot of what Nina was saying there, despite being such a massive company. Do you face similar problems at Siemens to some of the things that Nat was talking about, and indeed other SMEs, I'm sure, face?
Yeah, I mean, probably when we started on this journey, you're talking, God, what, the best part of 10 or 9-10 years ago that we started to look and say, what is it that we're not looking at? So at that time, there wasn't, Made Smarter wasn't around. There wasn't all of these different things. So what we actually did was engaged with, it's similar to what Nina was saying, like look around and what is available. So one of the things at that time that was available was the AMSCI program. So a government funding advanced manufacturing supply chain initiative, like you can see why they shortened it. And that was all around government putting money in around innovative projects, which we so there was like a lead company, we led it and engaged with, I think it was 5 SMEs within our supply chain. So they also, could put some money in terms of capital investment, but the government would then give a certain amount as well. So enabled them to invest in technology that was going to provide innovative processes. So that was a really good first step for us in terms of learning about what government funding is available, what opportunities, to support the SMEs that work in as part of our supply chain. And it was the start of the journey of learning for us as well, and seeing what is out there. And obviously that Siemens has got a lot of, like I say, software tools from that side that we then went into investigating and saying, well, what are we not using as a factory? And similarly then around the advanced manufacturing side. So, but it's a continuous learning, isn't it, for all of us? I guess is. We've started on that journey probably just earlier than others, and that there is more information around now, which is great. And Nina referenced the Made Smarter, which is fantastic. And there's lots of probably through them to then visit different companies. I know we have lots of people around, but like best practice sharing is another one. Go, and Nat said, go find out what's sort of going on in your area and learn from other people. Because like you said, work smarter, not harder. Like Google it, but go and join different forums. Make UK obviously has got a massive amount of sharing and can put people in touch with different regions and things. So there's a lot more out there than probably there was when we first started. But yeah.
Brilliant, thanks, Sarah. Kind of following on that vein, we've had a question in Nina that's been directed to you, but please, everybody else, feel free to pipe up if you fancy it. Going back to your presentation about the survey, someone has said it's interesting that a lack of available finance is a major barrier, and I saw indeed that was, I think, the second or third biggest barrier to digital adoption. This person's asked, how visible are financial models such as leasing, hire purchase and servitization, and how strong do you think is the appetite for adoption? We'll start with Nina, but if anybody else would like to.
So to kind of start from the end, I think the appetite for digital adoption is really, really high. Manufacturers are aware of the benefits, and they definitely do want to invest and change the way they do things and digitize, just change the processes and be more competitive. So appetite is definitely there. In terms of leasing, we've done a report recently on health investment. I don't remember exact statistics this time, but leasing is not as visible for manufacturers, and manufacturers tend to prefer buy new machinery and new equipment. Servitization, I think it's still in the process. I think it's a very good way, especially I think around pandemic, quite a lot of manufacturers picked it up. I know that there's quite a lot of innovation hubs or centers within the universities that are working around it and helping SMEs to get on the servitization programs, processes, and how can they adjust the business to become more competitive and have kind of different models of running business. But leasing, I don't think it's that visible for capital investment, I'm afraid.
Andrew, is there anything you'd add to that?
Well, I'm going to follow what Nat said earlier. Apart from giving all the secrets away about how to negotiate with the vendors, good job. Cloud is a great leveler. Because it moves something from a capital purchase, which it was in the past, to sort of a more like a P&L expense because it's a subscription. And think about it from the vendor's perspective. If you've got thousands of people using the same software on the same tenant, their costs go down, and therefore they're able to pass those savings on in terms of price differences. So you will potentially get better deals in a subscription cloud world because we can, and so take advantage of that. So it stops being a capital investment. It then becomes an expense, and then you can look at your expense in terms of and maybe even phase that expense in terms of returns. Some vendors will offer that as well, and that again all helps. It's all there to help. I don't know of any loan systems that allow you to do that on a subscription basis. Software companies in the past have always offered leasing, but there's always been on capital purchases that you can capitalize rather than on a subscription purpose. But like I say, I think cloud is a great leveler, and it does make it a lot more accessible, because the other cost that you avoid with cloud is you don't need the high cost internal resources to manage it. You manage your data, that's about it. The infrastructure, the storage, the hardware, the server rooms that you have, and all the expense that goes with all that all goes away. Basically, you get a log on and some training, and then off you go. So I think because of the way the industry has moved, it does make it much more accessible to SMEs, and I would say take advantage of that.
Just before we move on to some of the other questions we've had, some of the other topics that have been raised, Andrew, are you seeing you've mentioned cloud a lot there. Yeah. Are you seeing understanding and acceptance, I suppose, of the cloud growing? I remember 3 years ago, before the pandemic, we did a lot of webinars around what is the cloud and how can it benefit you, with Infor, and other vendors are available. And a lot of it was around very basic, this is what the cloud can do, and this is how it can benefit you. Are you seeing that that attitude changing? And indeed, do you think the pandemic maybe has accelerated that? It's something Nina mentioned.
I think the pandemic probably accelerated certain cloud applications, but in general, Chris, that it was already happening before, for all the reasons that I probably just cited, really. But the industry is moving more toward cloud-based applications. And yeah, you just see it all. Try buying a CRM system now that isn't 100% in the cloud, or a PLM. It kind of started at the edge, I would say. Those applications, HCM, PLM, CRM, things that can equally be put in the cloud, and now it's worked its way through to the enterprise applications as well. So I would say 7, 8 out of 10 of every net new opportunity we have, even for ERP, is cloud-based these days. There are still a few that stay they want to renew on premise, and we don't mind that. We'll allow that, but yeah, the emphasis is now to all cloud. And the funny thing is security was one of the reasons why people would not go 4 years ago, or they had concerns about that. Actually, now security is one of the reasons they will go because of the cyber attacks that they've faced. And yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, we had a scenario. I won't mention the company, but it was in Germany of a company that had that, and they actually went public with the fact they had a cyber attack. Well, mostly our customers do not want to go public with such things, but I think what made it newsworthy for them is they flipped to one of our cloud applications in about 4 weeks because they had a security threat, and this was the only way that they could, sort of clear themselves of that and get up and running on something different. So probably, one of those few stories you have that you can actually make public, because mostly when those happen, they don't want anybody else to know.
Brilliant.
Chris, can I jump in there as well? I just want to link to what Andrew said. So I've already declared for our business, we use a lot of cloud infrastructure. So whether it's Google Workspace, Google Enterprise, we've just come through a health check with the Cyber Resilience Centre, the one that's specifically based in the West Midlands, and I assume there are other regional cohorts. And we've gone through a fairly intensive questionnaire and a phone call interview. And they've done some external testing of our systems, and that in concert with obviously the cloud-based platforms and some internal software that we use Avast for our security software. We just got that. Now this might be the last thing I say, but the 2 thumbs up from the Cyber Resilience Centre, which, as a small business, yes, again, it's just one of those nagging things you need to do, like paying your business rates. But if you don't do it and you get caught, it can have massive ramifications. So that, in concert with, some anti-virus software, it just gives us that clean bill of health. So cloud has really helped us with our security as well.
Thanks, Nat. That's an interesting perspective, and from an SME as well. Just going to change the topic slightly, and onto something that a couple of people have mentioned in the Q&A. And Sarah, I know it's something that you and I have actually spoken about quite recently, and that's net zero sustainability. Indeed, you've spoken about it a couple of times already this morning. A few people have asked about how you balance moving towards digital technologies and a kind of digital approach with sustainability. And I know that Congleton is kind of a leading light in terms of sustainability. So I'd be interested for you to kind of explain briefly how you use digital technologies to kind of push ahead with your net zero and your sustainability goals.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the whole productivity and remaining competitive. If you're looking at either from a lean side or introducing new technology so that you're doing more with less, you're not needing as much equipment, then that is automatically going to help reduce your energy bills, reduce the amount of floor space. Using just, I say, simple new technology, but replacing the lights with LED lights will reduce your energy usage with different technology, albeit not like advanced technology, I guess. But using digital tools to monitor what energy you are using and identify if there's opportunities to switch machines off where it's possible to, that'll save you energy. Introducing different technology, solar energy. From our side, obviously we bought a gas turbine and did it through financing with Siemens Financial Services, and using biogas to sort of as a more renewable energy source, and also to cover us for times of brownouts and dips in the power that we were seeing. So yeah, I think it's all totally linked in with if you onboard digital technology, if you onboard advanced manufacturing tools, if you also making sure that the whole concept of lean manufacturing is reducing waste, then you're going to be doing more with less, and therefore using less energy, needing less space, needing it just goes on, and then being able to use that money potentially for, you know, either investing in additional people to meet the new, you know, requirements that we've all got seen in the uplift in orders that we've all got, or, you know, reinvesting that in, you know, in technology to make you even more productive. So yeah.
Brilliant, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, Andrew, is there?
Totally. I mean, firstly, there's no greater calling than for manufacturers apart from profitability. But I mean, profitability and sustainability should be inexorably linked. So, you know, benefiting one benefits the other, and there is no greater link between sustainability than all forms of digital technology. Whether it be you know, supply chain, it tends to be one of those areas. I mean, if you think about what is supply chain there to do, make sure that you produce just the right products at just the right time to meet customer demand. So anything excess, anything wasted is just wasted resources, whether it be energy or people or transport or materials. And so, you know, any investments in supply chain optimization are going to help you with your sustainability targets. I mean, for more advanced manufacturers, probably more on the larger side, you're probably looking at supply chain technologies that monitor and track and predict when product are going to cross the ocean, and that way you can, you know, you can support with your onbound traffic and transport. For the smaller manufacturers, it's just about just making sure that you don't waste materials and resources and people. So good forecasting, good supply chain planning, good production planning and scheduling optimization, making sure that you take advantage of all those solutions out there they'll predict when the equipment is likely to break and reduce machine breakdown. And I would say increasingly now, because of the high cost of energy, just making energy visible. How many factories do we walk into where you really only meter at the production plant level? You know, that's the best you get, and sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the you know, the facilities energy use and the equipment energy use on the production line. You don't need new equipment to do that. I mean, if you go to Innovate UK or, you know, any one of the catapults, they'll show you how you can take, you know, existing equipment, you can make energy usage visible with low-cost sensors, and then suddenly 5 machines that look identical and one of them is actually using 20% more energy than the other, fix it. You know, it's little things like that, because unfortunately, when you're walking around a plant floor, you have no clue what energy is being used. It's not visible, you can't see it. And so, you know, make it visible and then see if you've got a problem. If you've got a problem, then at least you know how to fix it.
Absolutely. And Nina, I'll bring you in at this point. Obviously, you've spoken to a lot of, I imagine you hear from a lot of Make UK members that energy prices obviously being as high as they are, sustainability is a big concern for a lot of businesses nowadays, not just from a doing the right thing perspective, but it's now, I think Make UK indeed put a report out earlier in the year that said energy was now business critical for a lot of businesses. Are you hearing from your members any stories about technology, a bit like Sarah was saying, technology kind of coming to the rescue, I suppose, and improving their sustainability?
Definitely. So it's the major challenge at this stage, the energy cost for all the manufacturers in the UK. And we did produce a paper last year about digital and green going hand in hand, and how digital technologies are helping sustainability and to decarbonize manufacturing sector. And, you know, I can throw some stats again, like over 35 of manufacturers said that digital technologies are helping them to manage the weight, like waste management and energy efficiency. So it's definitely there, specifically IoT. But, you know, things like data, the fact that we have access to technologies that can provide data and become visible, the machinery can become visible, and then we can analyze and act on it. It's just something that we should all be using, all manufacturers should be using, because it's just, yeah, it's what it is, basically, and it's necessary. So they definitely are doing something, and they connect that these two are going together.
Yeah, absolutely. Nat, is from a SME perspective, from the work you do, are you using technology to kind of cut your emissions or cut your energy use in any way?
Yes, however, it's this is a really difficult one at the moment, and one I don't really have good news on, because we are really struggling with our energy provider. And look, suffice to say, the energy companies themselves are in crisis at the moment. And if you can't phone them, if they won't return emails, if they physically won't talk to you, it makes it very, very frustrating as an SME. We do what we can to help ourselves. So outside of the energy providers, of which we deal with several, we have biomass heaters. We have our team, when they leave the workshop for their breaks twice a day, they switch the lights off. Even though we've got LED lights, we just switch the lights off. We've got isolators in all of our plant and machinery. We turn the isolators off so that there's not that even residual current being drawn overnight. We would love to get to the stage of knowing which piece of kit is drawing what current. That's the project I mentioned that had a 12-year payback. So whilst the sensors may be cheap, and bearing in mind on joinery equipment, most of it's 3-phase, so you need 3 sensors per piece of kit. It's not the sensors that were the issue. It was the pricing model on the data analytics. So that's again where that, that license model was working against us. And believe me, I did ask for a discount, but the answer was no on that one. I've not given up, and every time I do something like this with a forum, I say it, and then someone throws me, a link or a thread to follow up. So we will go after that, but it's something we've just talked about the national board meeting for Make UK, because I think the energy companies could do more to help small business, help ourselves, and finding out, what consumption we have. It would be a really easy one. In the residential market, there's a fantastic app I've heard about called Hugo, which just takes your MPAN number off your electricity meter, and then will show you what consumption you've got at home. Everyone should have a look at that, because I think it's energy provider agnostic. I would love to see something like that for small business in the UK, but for my energy providers right now, it's not available commercially, which I cannot get my head around. But anyways, that's where we are.
Yes, Andrew.
Andrew's going to tell me there is one.
I don't know. Maybe we talk later. Who knows? Because it's surprising for me that the analytics should be the more expensive part. So I will tell you a story, not of Infor. Then I'm not accused of overtly selling. I was at an event last week. In fact, I was hosting some roundtables last week at an event, and a particular company came along, and they were doing energy monitoring. So they basically instrumented some older equipment that they had. And I was kind of interested in it, because normally the way that we would do that is we'd bring that sensor data into an MES application, and the MES application, then we produce the analytics from there. And we have customers that do that. But this company didn't. This company basically short-circuited the whole of it. They were taking it directly from the PLCs into the cloud, and they did their own analytics on their own data from their own PLCs, really cutting out anybody else, frankly, and they were doing a very good job of it. So I was thinking that's interesting, that they didn't feel the need to go down any other route other than a homegrown route. So the analytics they used, I know which analytics it was, but it was analytics that would be generally in use in a business. So in other words, they didn't buy any separate analytics. They used the analytics that they were using to look at their finances, or to look at their their sales trends. It was just a standard analytic package, and they brought their data up into it was an AWS, I can't remember if it was an AWS or an Azure cloud, but it was into a data lake in the cloud, and they just built their analytics directly from that. See, I mean, maybe throw the question to Sarah. How does Sarah do it?
I don't know if the answer's all right, but I'm pretty certain there'll be a Siemens badge somewhere along the lines of it.
Yeah. I mean, 3 years ago, now we've always done energy monitoring, but it wasn't critical outside of a couple of areas. One, high cost, high energy consuming. So glass manufacturers, anything with a furnace, anything with concrete. But then secondly, actually, strangely enough, they're managing the energy, but they're using the heat to detect when a piece of equipment is failing. So it wasn't being done in those days because energy was affordable. It was being done because actually excessive heat or heat buildup is a leading indicator to machine failure. So it was being used as part of a predictive maintenance strategy. Now the economics have changed. And yeah, we do get more calls and more interest now for, I just want to make my energy visible, and I want to see what's the economical time, as you say, to hit that isolator switch and switch off, bearing in mind that some machines have a rundown or a warm-up period, so you don't do it unless it makes sense to do it. So that's the new game for a lot of companies.
Great, thanks, Andrew. That was hopefully, Nat, that might have been a little bit of inspiration or something to think about at the very least. There from Andrew. We'll move on again onto another topic that we've had a couple of people drop a question about, and it's after energy probably the second biggest problem facing manufacturers at the moment. That's around skills, and it was indeed the biggest barrier in the slides that Nina showed, the biggest barrier for companies investing in technology. We've had quite an interesting question in that maybe we can discuss. I suppose to everyone. I'll let you fight amongst yourselves as to who goes first. Do you have a plan to ensure strong training is in place before the rollout of cobots, etc., presumably just technology in general, are deployed? A major danger could be losing years of experience to other fields, which provide better structures for experienced workers to transition to a digital world. That is, I'm sure, a problem that a lot of companies face, where they either don't train people up well enough and they leave, or they train people up and they get poached. How much investment should you be making in skilling people up, and then how do you retain them, I suppose? Sarah, we'll start with you, but I'll come to everyone in turn.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's a challenge for all businesses now in such a competitive marketplace. You know, by and large, we've gone for around upskilling our teams, also bringing on, you know, apprentices and graduates, and really sort of bringing them through and creating that pipeline of talent. But it's really on, I think, the leadership in companies to make sure you create the right culture where people want to remain, obviously that you reward them adequately, etc., or competitively, such that they don't want to necessarily be tempted by, you know, another company that might offer them slightly more money, but actually, you know, do you want to risk going to that if you really enjoy working with the people that you're working with, the culture's good, you know, you're empowered to do the right thing, you know, you get to work on really interesting projects. So I think it's really important to train people to bring people on that continuous, you know, it's a continuous learning journey. Certainly from a Siemens point of view, all we're talking about now is having a growth mindset, making sure that we're open to different ways of doing things, that we're continuously learning, that it's not, you know, years gone by, maybe you did your degree and then that was it. You then implemented all this knowledge that you had, or started to become competent and then implemented. But now it's everything's changing so quickly. You need to be keeping on top of, you know, of all of the changes that are happening. So yeah, I think it's really important to bring people on that journey though, and you know, training is just one aspect to keep people on board. There's a whole raft of other things, some of which that we've spoken about in terms of setting a vision, people really believing the reason of why the company is doing what it's doing, that it's committed to its sustainability goals, that it's doing the right thing in the community, etc., etc. There's a whole host of things that we could get the FQM model out probably, and think of all of the different things that people really think is important these days. But yeah, there's a lot more but training is a big part of that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Nat, I'll come to you next.
We actually bought a cobot last year, so we've done this within the last 12 months. The reason we bought a cobot was born out of engagement. So we have a particular product that requires sanding. Forgive me if I demonstrate. Our joiners stand there with an orbital sander and they do this. And when we're using lots of that material, you know, they can be stood there for a long time doing a very boring and mundane task. So we asked the question, you know, has nobody sort of created a machine or a robot that can do this? And I kid you not, we went to the market and hey presto, there was this cobot arm, and somebody had already, one of the joinery machinery manufacturers had already adapted a specialist sanding head to sit on this cobot arm. It was a marriage made in heaven. We were then able to take advantage of the Made Smarter program. Incredibly good program. I'm so pleased to see that it's been extended in its support by government in the statement last week. So how did we then train the team to do that? Well, again, it was born out of engagement. Would you rather stand there and do this all day? Or would you like to interface with this cobot arm that's going to do it? And its interface just looked like an iPad, which I think unless you've been living on Mars for the last few years, most people have interfaced with an iPad. And then, you know, we're just a little bit of patience and settling people into using it in the workshop. She now has a name. The joiners refer to her as Sid. And Sid is happily in the corner of our workshop working away today. So that's, to me, it was not a hard sell, both on the return on investment calculation, which we had to do for Made Smarter, but in terms of getting our team to adopt it. And we didn't make anyone redundant because of it. We've only been able to upskill and do more, be more productive with the introduction of that cobot arm. So again, a really easy sell on the training side.
Thanks, Nat. Nina, is that, you know, the great story that Nat just told there, and indeed Sarah mentioned earlier, is that something you're seeing more and more across Make UK's members?
So I think it's like it's a very complex thing. It needs to address different areas within the business, but it probably starts with culture. So when we spoke to a manufacturer who invested in welding robots, but the culture within the business, when that was like first big piece of you know, the new machinery that would change completely how they work on the shop floor. They were talking about it for, you know, like ahead of the time that the change would occur. There was an open door policy. They would talk across, like with everyone across the business, and how the job of the people affected would change. So basically a little bit of upskilling, and that would obviously mean that the job would be slightly more interesting and better pay, etc., etc. So it's almost like a wholesome kind of way of running your business, the vision, how you see it, but you have to think about people that you have. In terms of acquiring new talent, like apprenticeships is something that we are very strong. We have our apprenticeships training. If you're looking for new people, look regionally, look locally to schools if you want to attract young people into your business, and then start from the beginning to kind of build up that workforce within your manufacturing side. There are many ways of like upskilling, training adult workers. Always include women in this, and I think diversity and inclusion as well is like another thing that we can get more new talent in places that we wouldn't probably expect to get it from. But this is area that all the manufacturers, decision makers, CEOs, I think need to open their eyes a little bit, like that the workforce is changing, the way we work is slightly changing, and we can adjust as well to where we do it.
Absolutely. I'm going to pick up on that in a little bit. But first of all, Andrew, I'm going to flip the question a little bit based on what everybody else has said and kind of expand it out a little bit. Can technology make manufacturing a desirable place to work for people currently in school, or will they go off to, maybe not Twitter at the moment, but Facebook and software companies like that? How do we attract all those software people into manufacturing?
Interesting that you flipped it, because I was thinking, you know, what my response would be. And I think, you know, before we start on the skilling, we start first on the recruitment. You know, we have a scarcity problem as well as a skilling problem, and attracting people into manufacturing in the first place. I do hear consistently is difficult, particularly for the early in career stage talent. So does technology have a role? Yeah, I think all forms of technology have a role. I mean, without wanting to offend anyone, as a young person who's used to an iPad or an iPhone, going into a factory where they might still have the old terminals with the green on black or the blue on black or the orange on black, it would be a nightmare. I mean, actually, there would be training involved. It would be cumbersome. It would be confusing. It would be not very intuitive. And it probably is more oriented toward just maintaining transactions, because that's what systems were designed to do 10 or 20 years ago. What the goal is now for a software company is almost like to remove any of the non-value added transactional tasks from the user, which they've been doing bit by bit. And you can refer to it as UX design, user experience design, to make things look more like an iPad or to make them simpler to understand. Or at the advanced stage, we are using artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, let's demystify those, because let's not be frightened by those. What's machine learning? It's learning what humans do and doing it and repeating it. So all those non-value added tasks that you go through in, I don't know, matching an invoice or submitting an expense and cross-checking it, or if you're an engineer, if you ever put a part on a part number on a system, on an ERP system, there's probably anything between 30 fields to 130 fields that you might have to add on. How manual and boring is that, and not very attractive for anybody to have to sit and do that all day? Well, if a machine learning system can learn how you've done it, and if you need an image of a supplier from a contact, it just goes out to the web and finds that image and puts it in the system so you don't have to, then that's making everything more attractive to users. And so if you think about the end goal there, it's how can I make it so that, as a human, we don't have to do any of those boring tasks. And instead, the AI and the ML then bring you more important things. You want to make decisions. You want to know, when you make that supply chain choice, what the impact of that is on the business. You want to know, whether it's going to contribute to your profit and loss, as Natalie said earlier on. So that's then when you then get into upskilling, because then those people who maybe have previously just done transactions are now, you're investing in them to make decisions, to make smarter decisions, and giving them the tools and technologies to do that. So tackling scarcity is through, keep your systems modern, and there's obviously an obligation on vendors just like us to continue down that path, and of course we will do that because that's where the market is at. And then internally, it's to make sure that as those non-value added tasks disappear, and naturally people will take on the more value added tasks, then that's where the upskilling comes in.
Thanks, Andrew. You made a really interesting point there, which I guess I've never really considered, in that iPads, the generation who are about to come into manufacturing have grown up with iPads and grown up with technology, and having to train them to use older technology.
Can you imagine?
Exactly. It's everyone says that the problem, I'm not going to adopt technology because I have to train everyone. If the technology is intuitive and everyone knows how to use it, you're actually going to be training them to use older systems. We'll stick on this topic for a little bit longer, because we've had quite a lot of reaction to it. Mainly things that we hear, quite a lot, and we don't want to turn this into a rant about skills, but we've had a few people say that there is an image problem. Everyone on this call understands the importance of manufacturing, but teachers and parents and the general public, I suppose, don't necessarily understand the fact that manufacturing is, as someone's put, manufacturing is no longer a dirty manual role. It's more about Industry 4.0, the Internet of Things, advanced automation and technology. And indeed, the same person's then asked, what can we do to make manufacturing seem attractive? Does it require an image overhaul? I guess people would argue yes and no on that. So maybe we can spend a couple of minutes just talking about that. I don't know who wants to go first on that. I'm sure we could probably fill an entire webinar with it, but we'll try and keep it to 5 minutes or so.
I can go first and be very practical about it, because we've heard this and it's been like a continuous debate, about manufacturing, if it's dirty, if it's not, and how do we, what do we do about it? So from Make UK point of view, we held a first National Manufacturing Day this year in June. This is something that we will be continue on doing, asking manufacturers to open the door. It's been really successful as a first piloting day today. Manufacturers opened the door, organized the schools, children came to see, have a look, a little bit talk, the try with robots in some places. And it's a very good way of interacting with your local communities. So this is, I think, what we keep doing. So we just need manufacturers to be volunteering and opening the door and interacting with the local communities.
Yeah, Andrew?
I think we're lucky in the UK. Many years ago, we started investing in these catapults. And so AMRC, anyone can go along, they can see an amazing facility at work. You may not know, there's a new one being built up in Glasgow. It's called the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland. It's for the whole of the UK, but it's where the most advanced technologies will be showcased. And I've been to it because Infor is a technology partner there. It's going to be amazing. So Sarah will be side by side, in that factory, because the Siemens block is right next to the Infor block. And you see the most advanced technologies, whether it be additive manufacturing, which is exciting to see in action, and the most advanced additive technologies, whether you see augmented reality. So right outside the Infor sort of space, because we've got the model demonstrator factory that we're kind of building an Industry 4.0 factory there, and right outside our space is augmented reality. So people wearing the glasses and seeing how you can visualize your plant or how your equipment is being used. You're seeing new CNC equipment there. I think Siemens have the advanced quality facility there, so taking quality to the nth degree. You've got legacy equipment where that's deliberately been put in there to help show how you can take legacy equipment, which, let's face it, 90% of us have, and then make it more intelligent and more instrumented. And all of that, if you think about that as being the whole institution is kind of owned by Strathclyde University, 3,000 people going through that every year, students, professors, doctors, industry, government. It makes manufacturing look exciting, and you'll see that in AMRC as well, and many others. So no, I think it's a wonderful place to be. It's not the dirty, grimy place that it has the image of. It's these places are they're cleaner than a food manufacturing place. I mean, they're amazing.
Andrew,
Actually,
what do you mean makes manufacturing look cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is cool.
It is. It is, absolutely. And I totally agree. I've been in it all my time. I love it. Yeah.
When does that facility open, Andrew? What's the timescale? Next May.
But I mean, AMRC is there.
MTC.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go if you haven't. Anyone on the call, if you haven't been to any of the catapult sites, like Andrew was saying, make sure you do it. They're really great, and tell everyone you know as well to go along. Keep spreading the word. Sarah, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's on us all, isn't it, to highlight all of the great things that which I know all of you guys on this call are already doing, but in terms of highlighting how fantastic the industry is in the UK, getting people involved in with schools and with parents. I know someone's mentioned on the chat about it, trying to get parents, making parents aware of what a great opportunity it is for people to go into engineering and manufacturing careers. Work experience, and it links into what Nina said around opening up your business where it's possible to show potential engineering students, manufacturing engineering students, that this is a great industry to work in through internships, work experience, open days like you say. Siemens have just I opened up they run a Sir William Siemens challenge, so that happened over this weekend with engineering students from different universities, trying to find the great and the good, but it's also about highlighting the potential opportunities in an engineering career that people have, and there are lots of opportunities. So it's all of us shouting about it, isn't it? How fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got about 10 or so minutes left, so we'll just begin to kind of wrap up. So if there is anything, for those of you listening, if there is anything really urgent you want to ask, please, now's the time, use it or lose it. But we'll kind of, something Nina mentioned a little bit earlier on was how the world of work has changed so dramatically, even for manufacturers working on the factory floor. In the last few years, the way, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but in 2019, I wasn't doing Zoom webinars, let's put it that way. In fact, none of us, I don't think, had ever really heard of Zoom, let alone used it. And there's things like that, we're using technology in a different way now. And that is beginning to reflect on kind of business models and the way that companies operate. And how, I'll go around, I suppose, as kind of a concluding question before we wrap up for good. What are the future business models that that digitalization is going to be able to support, I suppose, if that makes sense? And Andrew, we'll start with you, and then I'll kind of come to everyone.
I think many will talk about this, but the one that we see the shift most, because of manufacturing, is that shift toward servitization. So manufacturers no longer just want to produce a product and sell it and invoice it and have done with it. They want to be connected to the customer and the product, long after the product has been made. So all forms of servitization become interesting. And I'll tell a story of a company that I met just recently. They are an existing customer of ours, but they're in the equipment industry for fishing, for fish farming. So if you can imagine a salmon farm out in the ocean somewhere, they produce the nets and the equipment that allows salmon farming to take place. Now 10 years ago, that would have been, okay, they produce nets and that's the end of that. But no, they don't even see themselves that way anymore. They see themselves as helping, if like the higher level goal, helping feed the planet. And how do they do that? By working with the salmon farmers to make the most yield of salmon fish possible. So they've changed their thinking about what they even are. They're no longer an equipment supplier. They're almost an enabler of growing fish healthily to the farmers. And then what do they do to do that? All digitalization stuff. So, they've taken the nets, they've found ways of putting cameras around the nets so they can see how they grow. They optimize the feed that goes in for the salmon. They've even submerged the nets, so salmon are no longer surface beast. They're brought underneath, because that way they can avoid lice. And if they avoid lice, it means you can get 25% more farming stock out of your fish. And so you're healthier fish, they grow faster. You don't pollute the planet with feed that doesn't get fed and just pollutes the bottom of the ocean. That for me is like your ideal servitization model. You no longer buy from that company just because you want to buy some decent nets. You'll buy from that company because you want to grow fish fast, healthily, with the least amount of waste and sustainably. I mean, to me, that's a fantastic sustainability story and a servitization story as well. And I think every company is thinking about how can they stay more connected to their customers? How can they add more value to their customers? And they will use all forms of technology, some of which will be digital, in order to help them do that. That's the business model I see manufacturers pivoting toward.
What a brilliant example. Thanks, Andrew. Sarah, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, I think from Siemens' point of view, it's similar to what Andrew was saying in terms of people are more, and Siemens is definitely more moving around to the software or something as a service rather than selling in the traditional way that it was used to. We recently launched the Accelerator, which is basically an ecosystem that recognizes that actually we're not going to be, if we're going to solve some of the biggest challenges in the world today, we need to do it together with different companies. We're not going to be able to provide everything ourselves. And so it's about bringing those people together. I think to what Andrew was saying, that the right people, the experts with the necessary hardware, software to answer some of these big challenges that we've got in the world today. So yeah, quite similar.
Thanks, Sarah. Nat, over to you.
Well, manufacturing, from my point of view, is alive and kicking in this country, and whether we've got parents or teachers saying otherwise, then I'm simply going to say they're ill-informed. I would like to see us be as proud of our manufacturing backbone as, for example, the German economy is. But I think in terms of digitalization, there's that great saying that necessity is the mother of all invention. And we have got demographics coming into play here. So manufacturers are having to think how they achieve what they need to with perhaps fewer or different people, whether that be younger people, more diverse, just fewer people. So it is coming, it is going to happen. And I think to take us full circle, as you said at the beginning of the call, if you're not even thinking of it right now, it is going to bite you on the bum, definitely. So it's alive and kicking in this country, and I think the best is yet to come.
Great, and finally over to Nina.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with all of the speakers. But digitalization and manufacturing, innovating for manufacturers is very important. Like Sarah kept mentioning lean manufacturing, if you need to start from there, then to digitalization. I think manufacturing is the kind of issue solving sector that we can be part of, like a key part of getting the sustainability on, the meeting the net zero targets. And technologies will be crucial, like almost like, you know, a crucial part of this. Without technologies, we won't be able to meet all these, face all these challenges for sure. But again, just be a little bit braver. I know that there's some manufacturers who think that they're doing well and what they've been doing for years, it kind of brings a result and it's okay. But I think just getting out there a little bit more and seeing what others are doing. Or come to Make UK, email us. We will help out. Absolutely,
there is support out there, and as Nat said earlier, if in doubt, just Google it. There'll be something out there. If anybody watching is stumped as to where to start or where to go next, it can be quite complicated. But as we've said throughout, there is plenty of support out there, whether that's Make UK or people like Andrew at Infor or even other manufacturers. then everyone, we are an industry that's quite good at helping each other out if needs be. Unfortunately, we've kind of run out of time. It's been a really fascinating hour and a half or so of discussion, and hopefully those of you who are still with us, thank you very much for listening. Hopefully you've all got something out of it, learned quite a lot. As we said, this has been recorded, so I'm sure you'll be able to find a recording of it somewhere. It'll be sent to you, and I know Infor are doing quite a lot with it as well. As we said earlier, the Nina's presentation and the report will also get sent out to everybody. So if you want to have a proper look through that and see some of the interesting things that Infor and Make UK found in that, then in your own time, then be sure to flick through that, because it is, I think, like Andrew said, it's a very interesting and very well written report that's got some quite interesting conclusions in it. With that though, all that kind of remains for me to say is thank you very much to all of you for logging on, especially those that asked some really thought-provoking questions and kind of put the panel on the spot a little bit with some of them. But most of all, thank you to Sarah, to Nat, to Andrew, and to Nina and everyone at Make UK for putting the event on and making it so successful. Thank you all very much. Hopefully see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.